Hi! I'm very excited for this video because it's another Arrtx video. I am so happy that they decided to collab with me again. I've currently used their sim tap and their, I think it's just regular, but I have those acrylic markers, so I'm very excited to try these ones. If you know me, I love acrylic markers, and I hope you guys like them as well, because there should be a promo code on screen. There should be a link in the description for where you can buy this. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I hope you guys are also excited because I'm finally doing the anatomy tutorial that everybody has been asking for years. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm 19. I'm not an expert. I've always been studying anatomy because I think human bodies are fascinating. I'm going to show you how I study anatomy and how I break down bodies. Some other channels that I do recommend from when I started my journey, along with some books. Proco is a huge artist. I think it's just like a group channel. They're awesome. Their tutorials are amazing. I got a lot of artists and inspiration from their videos. So I really recommend them. Lauvon really helped me with my digital art. I remember that. I think I still follow them on Instagram. By the way, if you didn't know, my Instagram got disabled, so my Instagram should be on screen right now. But it's just Prications with an underscore. Another artist that has really inspired me to focus on dynamics and movement in my art is Rembrandt Montalde. Specifically this video from the Proco channel. I have two art books specifically that really did help me. The first one I bought when I was in 4th grade, so I used to just copy down poses or use the poses in art whenever I felt like it. I currently don't know where that book is, so I'm a little scared, but the book is Anatomy in Action by Raul Moreno. It is a very helpful book, and it helped me with my movement, which is something I value a lot in my bodies and my art. The final book is kind of newer. I've been obsessed with this artist for, I want to say, like 3 years-ish. They made Mad K, and they made Centaurs and all the other little stories that I adore. Ryo Sumiyoshi / Suzuri. I love their art, and I'm currently reading this book. And don't let the cover deceive you. It is the most interesting book I've ever read in my life, and it's really helpful, and I think it's very beginner friendly, so I think all those people that I just listed are super important. I'm gonna swatch all these pens because I'm so excited. The sketchbook I'm using is an Arrtx sketchbook. I think it's A5, but I'm not 100% sure, but I should have it linked in the description as well. But I do recommend this. It lays flat and the paper is super thick. I've used markers that bleed through on both sides, and it's barely visible, so I'm very excited about that. But now for the real treat that everybody's been waiting for. Yes. I'm so excited for this. These colors are absolutely gorgeous, and it's 2 layers. I'm so excited. But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to swatch them all. I don't know where to start first. It's kind of organized how I would typically organize it, but I'm gonna redo it in my perfect way real quick. This is how I would organize the markers. This one is a little bit of a weirder shift, but I don't know, I'm very excited. This color specifically is calling my name. I'm so excited. Ooh, oh, it's not streaky at all. Ooh, oh my gosh, that looks beautiful. I love this color, it's so gorgeous. The next color, I'm gonna switch these around real quick because I don't like the order of that. This one, they're so juicy as well, and it has like the nib is pretty firm, which I appreciate. I wonder if I shake it, if it will help it do anything to it. Ooh, oh my gosh, that one's, oh, I'm so excited. And then this one, shake then enjoy. It says shake then enjoy. I haven't been shaking them really, but this one I'm very excited for. It's like a ochre golden yellow color. Oh, I love these colors. But then I'm just gonna write down the colors on these, and I'm just gonna complete it, and I'll come back with it all done. So I finished all of these beautiful swatches. I'm in love with these colors. These colors are absolutely gorgeous. I love this like cool tone neon orange. It's so pretty. These 2 colors, I knew I'd love them, and I do. I love this color. I'm so excited to use them. I'm gonna get to the anatomy tutorial. Like, you guys want, I swear. So first, I'm gonna give you some websites that I use. Main one, I talk about this all the time, Line of Action, lineofaction.com. I know a lot of people say, oh, they have the same models, oh, they're so stale, oh, blah, 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 blah. They update their poses pretty frequently, I would say, in my opinion. And using the same models is really interesting because you could see all the different perspectives of that same body. And if you redraw the poses over the course of your anatomy practice, you can see your improvement. And I think that is more valuable than having a ginormous range of different poses and never finding the same one again. If you want more poses and want more dynamic poses, I would say Pinterest has a lot. The only problem I see with Pinterest, in my opinion, is, first of all, a lot of it is not credited towards people, which is kind of the nature of it. And second of all, a lot of the models have the same body type and they're very conventionally attractive, which if you want to practice that, go right ahead. But I prefer a more diverse range of figures, and I think it can broaden your scope on character design and just knowing the human body way more. Another website that's really, really important to me is sketchfab.com. I only use one model. There's hundreds of other models on there, but I use it on my iPad, and it's the 3D face. It says female head sculpt. If you look up 3D face Sketchfab, you'll find it immediately. The final thing is kind of basic, but I always look up skeletons and human muscle anatomy to further push that. If an arm is moving or a leg is moving in a certain direction, your neck is swiveling. Say I have someone like, I don't know, curling their bicep. I look up curling the bicep, you know? So you can see how the muscles contort and stretch and interact with one another and all the ligaments and joints. And I want to express this more than anything. References aren't cheating. I think that's a pretty, like, that misconception, that myth has fallen out of the, I don't even know, like 2016, like art YouTube drama thing. But references are not cheating. They are helpful, okay? Like, even if you copy the references, that is aiding you in creating and recreating all those different poses, all those different body parts, all those different like pieces of fabric that fold with the form. References are integral to improving your art. And if you are struggling with something, practice it. If you are struggling with anything, look up a reference. It is not bad. References are number one in art, and I will stand by that. But speaking of references, if you do have the option to go to a croquis session, modeling session, a portrait session, any sort of life drawing, that I believe is more important. Photographs are a distortion. Not to get all Susan Sontag, but like, photographs are a distortion and they can only capture one moment. In life, you can see the person breathing and moving and how they adjust their position, how they make themselves more comfortable, how their expression changes over time, how their body naturally shifts. And you have to move your materials around with that. And I think that's really, really important. But it's absolutely wonderful. If you have an opportunity to go to a croquis session, I cannot say how important it is. It is so helpful. And if you are scared of going to croquis sessions, whether that be the nudity or you're nervous that your anatomy skills aren't, you know, up to par to other people, you're comparing yourself to others, I promise croquis sessions are one of the chillest things ever. Everybody is super kind. Typically, this is my experience, but I don't know. The nudity, I think, I don't have a problem with nudity, but if you do see a problem, you can leave whenever. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox now, but croquis is awesome, please go. But I'm just gonna do how I practice anatomy and how I figure out the different gestures and parts of the body. I think the key features to studying anatomy, and before we even place the body down on the paper, is figuring out which parts of the body contract and which parts are stable. The main anchor points in the body are the skull, the ribs, and the pelvis. Honing your focus in on these core features are really, really important to placing your bodies down on the paper and composing them in the way that you like. With 206 bones in the body, obviously all of them are not comprised in these three features. You know, you're not walking around with limp little legs. So, and the muscles need to stick onto something, so you do have bones everywhere else. Not a huge revelation, but just wanted to mention that. The One of the most important parts of the body, for me at least, for dynamic poses is the spine. In your spine, you have CTL, cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. Those are the main parts, and then at the bottom there's the sacrum and coccyx, but we don't really pay attention to that. I always just like flip it onto the pelvis because it's around the same area as that. It's not integral to know them, but I personally like learning about them. Cervical, neck, obviously. Thoracic is the ribs, and then lumbar is your abdomen. Since this is a 3/4 / like front facing view, you can't really see the curvature of the spine, but in the thoracic part of the spine, there is a like convex in the back of it. Knowing every single bone in the body and every single ligament, every single tendon is not important. If you want to go that far, go ahead. I think these are the main bones in the body that should be focused on in anatomy. We have the femur, patella, tibia, and fibula. Then at the heel, you have the tarsus. Then you have the metatarsal bones, and then phalanges of the feet. We've already covered the pelvis, but I'm just gonna overlay it. Look at how clean it overlays. Oh my God, I'm so excited about these pens. Another important feature is the sternum, and then the ribs. There's 24 ribs in the human body, 12 on each side, but I just put them where they go. Then you have your humerus, you have your radius, and your ulna, carpal, metacarpal, and then the phalanges once more. Obviously, this isn't super proportionate, but just showing you the main bones of the body that I think should really be focused on. And then obviously we have the skull, and I definitely didn't forget the clavicle, not because it's my least favorite bone at all, but anyways. Actually, on the back of the body is the scapula. For reference, clavicle is in the front, they can connect here, and then the humerus is right here. Obviously, these are not perfect shapes. This is just what my mind goes to immediately when I'm trying to draw the body, but this is my basic forms for you. And while we could get into all the different ligaments and tendons and contractions of the body, I think there's only a certain amount of joints and points of movement that we should be aware of. They are the shoulders, elbows, wrists, neck, hips, knees, and ankles. If I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't really focus on the skeletal structure. I know I probably should, but it's just not something I'm super interested in. It's always in the back of my mind when I am drawing, therefore mostly focusing on the muscles of the body, but do not get your hopes up. I cannot name any muscles in the body, so don't ask for that. Now, if we're gonna look at this skeletal structure, we're gonna notice that it is not proportional at all. The arms are too long, legs are too long, and if you want to exaggerate those, go right ahead, but I'm talking about basic anatomy and practicing it. There are certain ratios and relations in the body that we can discuss. One ratio that we talk about pretty often relating to the height is 1:7 or 1:8, depends on which area of art you're studying and which artists you are interested in. The ratio is one body is 7 heads tall or 8 heads tall. So if we look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a little long. Here are some quick ratios and relations in the body. Obviously not perfect for everybody, but pretty common. The navel is usually level with the elbow, if I can draw a straight line. The length of the forearm is about the same length as the foot, from elbow to wrist. The circumference of the neck is half of the waist about. The wrists usually line up with the top of the thigh, and the heels are almost parallel to the pelvis or the butt. The thigh and the lower leg are about the same length. This is also with the forearm and lower arm. Here is the final first part to the basic skeletal structures, movements of the body, and ratios. Obviously, as you study more and more, if you want to adjust these ratios, if you want to deform the body, if you want to change it in any sort of way that you see fit, go right ahead. Personally, I love long legs on my characters, so my torso and my legs are usually a little bit different. Typically, they're about the same length, but I make my legs a little bit longer than usual. In this next section, we're going to talk about observational drawing and the difficulties with that and how to overcome those difficulties. The biggest difficulty with the observational drawing is knowing versus seeing. This is when we intuitively draw what we know rather than what we see. This can cause things to look uncanny, unnatural, in the wrong order, the wrong perspective, and can really destroy the drawing's composition. This is why composition is so important, because a solid composition can hide bad technique and skill, but a bad composition can ruin those skills. Obviously, when just studying the human body and certain features, we don't need to really focus on the composition, but do pay attention to the intricate movements and the motions and the particular lines that collide with one another in the body and overlap and are parallel to one another. One big part of knowing versus seeing is customary perception. Customary perception is how we perceive things in everyday life. You may not realize you are doing this, but you are doing this constantly. Humans choose to abstract objects to recognize them as soon as possible. We use symbols and symbolic knowledge of all these different materials to compare and contrast with one another. We use it in our language. We use it in our everyday life. We can see this on the last page with the scapula. Scapulas aren't perfect triangles. They're an organic shape, yet I used a triangle because it's the shape I'm most familiar with. In certain parts of the body, like the skull and the pelvis, I use a lot of rectangular prisms, squares. I use those shapes because you can see the different planes on the body and it gives me a better sense of perspective. It is very difficult to get out of customary perception. I struggle with it a lot, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it's that necessary to completely get rid of customary perception. It's always going to be there, but to completely ignore it is difficult. And when learning anatomy, I think focusing on basic shapes is more integral. Another difficult part of knowing versus seeing is aesthetic perception. We may believe that the way we see things is just innate to us. It is not. We are taught to see things differently. In order to transform a 3D object onto a 2D plane, we need to view it aesthetically. This is focusing on certain nuances in the body, focusing on certain relations and ratios, which we just talked about, so we have some knowledge already. Another difficulty with observational drawing is part-to-part ordering. This is when we focus on individual parts of the body or just a drawing in general, instead of focusing on the larger picture and composition. Now you may hear this and be like, well, if I'm only focusing on an arm, then I'm only focusing on that arm. But in reality, that is not what you're observing. We cannot see individual parts. We have to see the whole. And the reason why we're focusing or only looking at that individual part is because we're depending on the other pieces in that puzzle. In order to break away from the innate part-to-part ordering, we need to focus on the whole composition while drawing. Part-to-part ordering can lead to various different inaccuracies in the drawing. One of them is floaters. For instance, drawing a hand and then drawing the skull and trying to connect those in the shoulders and realizing they're way too far apart and your right arm is way longer than your left arm. Next one is unresolved work. This one is pretty self-explanatory. It's a thin veneer of surface details with nothing really tying them together effectively. And finally, there are problems with scale, proportion, value, or tonal relationships. For this, we're mostly just focusing on scale and proportion. Because part-to-part ordering is innate for us, what are some of the reasons why we do this? We're a perfectionist. This is when we know how to do surface details in certain objects or parts of the body. Everybody kind of makes fun of that one kid in middle school that would always just draw an eye over and over and over again. That is what we're talking about. If that was you, no hate. I was the same. This is when we're scared to even put our pencil down on the paper because we're intimidated by it. We're scared of messing up, another reason with the perfectionist. We're fearful of corrections that we need to make, but in reality, if you don't put your pencil down on the paper, there is no improving. Another reason why we are so poor at observational drawing is our nature versus our nurture. Not actually nature versus nurture, but nature and nurture. They are both working against us in observational drawing. Our brains, with customary perception, we love to abstract objects, so we use symbols, and our muscles are not equipped for the task. We need muscles for everything else, but art is something completely different. This leads to the next issue, magical thinking. This is believing that artistry just comes to those who are born with it. Talent just comes naturally, and there's no sort of effort put into this. You either have the gene or you don't. Drawing takes practice. This is why we cannot be scared of white paper, because if you're not practicing, you're not getting better. And I can understand how it can be difficult to look at something and not be able to translate it onto the page, but that should motivate you. Failure should motivate you to try to become the best possible artist you can. You need failure to accomplish success. Some other issues are not knowing the materials. This is why choosing a familiar material is so crucial. If you're starting to study anatomy, you don't know it that well. If you're using a new material, you don't know it that well. Not knowing plus not knowing equals more confusion. Not knowing anatomy, but knowing how to work a graphite pencil because you've been using it through your entire school year can lead to success. And the last one is overemphasis on accuracy. This can go along with part-to-part ordering. I swear that thing comes back every single day. And specifically the perfectionist part, wanting to make it as accurate as possible. If we're gonna make something as accurate as possible, you might lose visual interest. Later on in your anatomy journey, it will help you discover what you want to emphasize in your bodies, what you want to deform in your bodies, what you want to get rid of in your bodies. Overcoming the difficulties with observational drawing is not going to happen like this. It's going to take practice. It's going to take weeks of work. In this section, I've used a lot of notes from my Drawing 1 class I took last semester, dropped out of college, don't talk about it. I just want to show you what time, effort, and practice can do to your art within the span of a few months. Here is my first piece in that class, and here is my last piece, and then along with the same object that I made in the first piece. That was over the course of 3 months, I want to say. There are ways to improve your art. You just need to be intentional about it. There are 2 different ways to go about drawing, and combining those is really, really essential, but to separate them, there's linear and then there's shape. Linear is what we are most familiar with. There are different type of lines we can produce with different kind of materials, and also just different kind of perception of the object. Some of them are calligraphic lines, directional/organizational, contour line work, and gesture drawing. This is one of the most important parts of figuring out anatomy. We're gonna get to shape later, I promise. That's how I mainly study anatomy now, but I'm gonna focus on gesture because this is how I started. If you do not know what a gesture is, it is the process of building the structure and the interesting foundation of a drawing. Speed, 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 speed. You need to be as quick as possible with this. You have no time to linger on a certain part. We are not going to part ordering. We're not being a perfectionist. We are getting something down on this paper. We are. If you start doing gestures and you are comfortable, you are not doing gestures. You need to be uncomfortable. You need to get out of your comfort zone for this. You don't think you observe when you do gestures. Doing gestures is a continuous process of correcting yourself. And I think the most crucial part to doing gestures is knowing how to control your eyes. We are not wide-eyed, we are not doe-eyed, we are squinting. You look dumb as hell. I will be honest, you look dumb as hell when doing it, but it is crucial, it is integral to knowing how to do gestures. This forces our brain from switching to customary perception to aesthetic perception. You should be looking at the object thrice as long as you're looking at the paper. Don't even glance at that paper. If you're just starting gestures, I don't want you to even think about that white sheet of paper. I want you to look at that object and just draw intuitively. I recommend doing about 60 seconds to start, then 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, and then maybe 2 minutes if you really want to go back into that, and then 30 seconds again. Hell, even do 10 seconds. I think that would be perfect. That's awesome. It doesn't need to look good. It doesn't need to look like anything. You just need to put lines down on your paper. We are not going to be a perfectionist. The process of it is repetition, repetition, repetition. So look, squint while looking, intuitively draw a line on your piece of paper. It doesn't matter what it looks like because you're going to look and squint again, and you're going to correct. You're going to correct that line because it was probably not right. And you're going to repeat that process until you run out of time, until you're happy with your gesture. While doing a gesture, you are investigating that object. You may not feel like it because you're flustered, you're flabbering everywhere, you don't know what you're doing, but you are investigating that object within those 30 seconds. I'm just gonna model how I do gestures. I have my setup, I have a computer in front of me. I honestly think an iPad would kind of be better, but I'm too lazy for that right now. And I have line of action up, and typically I would have all models, so both clothed and unclothed, but I'm just gonna use clothed ones for this video, obviously. All genders, all ages, and all orientations of the image. And then there's timing. I usually do custom timing or unlimited timing for when I am doing my typical practices. But for the gestures, I'm gonna do 30 seconds, but I'm just gonna do 5 for right now, and whatever I get, I get. I don't know if I will be talking during this section, so there might be some music, it might be sped up, I don't know, I might do a voiceover, but we're starting right now. I'm not looking at my paper basically at all. The photo should be right on screen, and I'm focusing on different proportions of this. I started too far on the left. Now I'm stuck in this. 5 more seconds left. This is so difficult. Okay, next one. Okay. I'm making these too big and I'm realizing that now, but whatever. They're not gonna be complete. Okay, I could do the legs up here. Fuck it, why not? 5 more seconds. Perfect. Next one. Oh, I like this pose a lot. I'm gonna do the line of action right there. With the spine, you can see where his hips jut out and his leg. Got that. Elbow, spine, scapula, side profile. I am barely looking at my paper right now. Next one, line of action again. I feel like line of action is pretty important, especially when composing a full drawing, to show where the movement is throughout the piece. Not just the body, but through objects in the whole composition. But yeah. I'm sorry if this is a little more unclear than the beginning parts, but you know. Last one, same model as before. Kind of gave her crab hands, but it doesn't matter. I know where the hands would be as I'm drawing this. Proportion, head way too big. Fixing that. Chest, hips going out. Let's do the plane. And then that proportion, and that is it. Obviously, if we look at them, they are not perfect, but it gives me a basis for sketching. And if we see, this is the first sketch, right? And even throughout 5 sketches, I feel like I improved a lot. I figured out the scale of my paper. I figured, well, a little bit, this one's a little janky, but this one, I feel like shows a lot of improvement. I was a little nervous about this one. This one was way too big. This one, I was too focused on certain details, making certain things the same size, causing the proportions to look off, but you know, they're not perfect. But it's something on the page, even though this may look a little confusing to people, but it makes sense to me, like these certain lines, and I feel like if you can make sense of your gestures, that's all that matters. I spilled some of the pen on the paper, but I'm just gonna show you how, sorry, this one is a little messy. I'm not sure why. This was the only one that came kind of too much acrylic paint, but I also figured out that you can unscrew this. Isn't that cool? I don't know. I thought that was really cool. Anyways, so I'm just going to show you how I, you know, refine the sketch just a little bit, not a whole lot. Bun, hair, ear. Still working fast, not super gesturally, still looking at my paper a little bit, but mostly looking at that reference. That took me a while to say reference. I would recommend, if you're interested in learning certain muscle groups and how they contract and convex and, you know, abduct and all this stuff. If you're interested in that, I would say posing and looking at, I'll put it on screen. I can't think of it right now. Those people, their muscles are on full show, 24/7, 365. So you can see the muscles through the skin and you can see all the difference. This you can see how I shifted the head too far. And now you can see the basis of the sketch, how I messed up in certain areas. This leg wasn't pushed out enough. This one, still too big. Arm needs to be up higher. This needs to be down lower. Head needs to be smaller and shifted more here. Ear needs to be here and here. It's more of an even T-pose composition than I originally thought. This one isn't too difficult. I'm not going to focus too much on the face because we're more so just studying the full body anatomy rather than the facial anatomy. But yeah, let's see how this, I do like the bodysuit that she is wearing because you can see the different planes of the body. I jutted the hips out a little bit too much and head is not looking up enough. Also, I just want to say guidelines are awesome. If people say like, oh, I don't use guidelines anymore. I don't care. I love guidelines. But anyways, so here's that. I mean, it's not perfect, but I mean, it's there. This one, this guy kind of reminds me of Ozzy from Survivor. I'm really into Survivor right now. I apologize. I made the blade too high up. I can tell right away. Face is too large and I can't fit the nostril, and the blade would be here compared to that one. Ear. Line of action is pretty important. In this one, I think it really adds to the overall posing and configuration of the model. Arm is too close to the body. See the ribs, torso, hips. Hips are jutting out in the opposite direction of the, what is it called? Ribs. I made this too squished. I can already tell the leg needs to be way further out and way down farther because at this point the arm is meeting the knee right here when it should be meeting about here. So I probably made the back too large, made his head too big and the bottom too small, but it's practice, it's practice. Next one. This one should be pretty easy. It's kind of an easier pose and my composition of the gesture was pretty swift. Another important thing, this might be for later reference, we're mostly focusing on linear structures currently, but to figure out the forms and how they can curve and all the different nuances in them, I think a good strategy for that is focusing on where the light source is and how it shades the body, so you can see the different overlaps, the reflective light, all the different types of light shown throughout the body. Such as like with the face, you can see that the nose is protruding out, so it has a shadow there. It goes over, eye is protruding out, so it has a little light right there. Eye curves in, line right there. Sectioning out, what is it called? Shadows is really, really important to figuring out the overall form and convincing yourself that this 2D object is a 3D form. Another huge thing that I like to mention about feet and legs, legs are not completely straight. I'll reference that in just a second here. Legs are never completely straight. If we're looking at legs and you decide to draw them like this, that gives no dynamic positioning to them. It's flat, it's 2D. If you like that, go ahead. But with legs, say you have your patella, right? Hips, and then your heel, right? Your thighs will jut out, right? But, I don't know, flat ass, maybe not, I don't know. And then this curves in. This is a really important part. When two lines are connecting in a curved manner, it leads the viewer's eye to here and then stops. So an important part to convincing a more fluid pose is to overlap the line so there's a flow line, right? So knee, that connects with the back of the leg. Not actually, but you know, there's a line there. And then this kind of connects with that, connects to the edge of the patella, and then you have more of a dynamic positioning, and you can go there. This can curve into the ankle, then foot. So as you can see, say if we were to do, you know, this strategy. Well, I'm like struggling. That is so much less dynamic than this. This, it kind of looks like they're, I don't know, squatting a little bit, but there's always a curve here and a curve there. It goes in like an S shape. Last sketch, bun, hair. The posing on this face is a little bit difficult, so I'm really trying to focus on what I see rather than what I know, because I can see that there's a nose and the eye, blah, 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 but I'm looking pretty directly at this reference currently because some of these parts are a little difficult to find and gesture out and see. The hip, we can tell with this one, ribs are going this way, hips are popping out this way, so you can see that the line between the butt and the, what is it called, the ribs, they're forming a curve right here from the upper left hand to the bottom of the butt. And yeah, once again, legs. The ankle is jutting out and causing more of a protrusion than typical. The end of the, or the top of the calf is at about like this degree of an angle. If we want to figure out angles, this is kind of like skipping forward a little bit. If you want to figure out angles, a good part, I never understood this, right? I was like, this is stupid. I don't know why I would do this. Is to put your pen, say this is the photo. Say these are the legs, right? And I can't figure out the angle. Put your pen where the angle is, go on the page, and you'll figure out the angles and you'll have it perfect. So sighting stick is pretty important if you want to do that. But yeah, so here's that. And very cool, very, 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 very cool. I honestly, this one is my favorite. But you can see how just five gestures. Typically, I wouldn't even do the green pen part. I just wanted to show how I see it. I think gestures are a really important part of drawing. That green pen kind of got like everywhere, but whatever. Now it's on to more specific techniques other than gestures. This, I believe, is one of the most influential parts of observation drawing and being able to dissect a study in an image. Positive and negative shape. Positive shape is the figure. It's what we usually reference when we see an object. Say you're looking at a bowl of fruit. You're only looking at that bowl of fruit. That's the positive shape. It's the object. The negative shape is everything else besides that one object. So the background, the ground. The reason why it's so important to learn not just the positive piece of the artwork, but also the negative piece is they combine into one picture. It's not just about the figure, it's about everything else in the picture plane. This is once again slipping into aesthetic perception, but instead of looking at the figural object, we're looking at the background of it, okay? To reference this, I drew just like a random vase, looks chopped as hell, it took me 5 seconds. But the vase is the positive shape. Positive, positive, positive. That's why it's colored in. In the negative shape, to more clearly show this as like a puzzle, I tend to separate. This is kind of part to part ordering, but it helps in the long run, I swear. I separate it into different chunks and you can see the contour line of that object. I feel like I'm not explaining this super well, so I do apologize. If you guys want a better explanation, look up positive and negative shapes explained in art and observation drawing. But I swear this is one of the most helpful things ever and people dismiss it constantly because it feels really childish. I'm pretty linear in all of my drawings, so I really want to work on my forms and my shapes in art. So this is why I have switched to this recently. Not only can it be used for humans, I've used it on animals. I did some studies of cats because I was doing a commission. I've done some horses because of the 24-hour sketchbooking challenge, which should be somewhere around here. Might be recommended at the end. And although I am praising this technique like crazy because it's something I'm really, really passionate about currently, my mind might change. I might be getting new techniques. I might realize that what I'm saying currently is not a true reflection of what I feel. and that goes throughout the whole video. My art is always changing and my style is always changing. The way I go about anatomy is always changing. I'm always learning and I'm always growing, and you should too. So if you take stuff from this video for a few months, a day, a couple hours, that's awesome, because anatomy isn't stale, it isn't stagnant, it is always changing, and people are discovering new ways to form connections throughout the body. And what I see may not be seen through someone else's eyes. Like I said, seeing is learned, it is not innate. You know, I have my aesthetic preferences, I have different sorts of shapes I form in the body, and some people might disagree with that. A point against silhouette drawings is a lot of people think that beginners shouldn't be using this as a form of studying anatomy because you're not actually figuring out what's inside the body, just the outside. You're not figuring out where it's exactly placed and everything. I completely disagree. I think if you use silhouette drawings multiple times, you'll be able to find the different nuances and different angles and where shapes line up and how they fully form a full body. When I first started doing my intentional anatomy practice, I started with silhouettes because it really helped me. And then when you feel comfortable with your silhouettes, go on to gestures, and then go back to silhouettes, go back to gestures, go back to silhouettes. I'm currently in my silhouette phase, but I can 100% guarantee you I will go back to gestures. Mix it up. Staying in one place for too long can cause your other skills to become stagnant, so you need to be constantly changing. Change is beautiful, it's awesome, it's great, it's what improves your art. As we've seen with the gestures, it really focuses on speed of it because that is the whole basis of gestures. Through speed, you gain more control and more knowledge on how to hold your materials, how to control your materials, how to control your arms. With my silhouette drawings, I still want to focus on speed as it helps my control over my lines and my line confidence. But with the silhouettes in general, I take a little bit more time. I don't usually time myself. For silhouette drawings, I typically use complementary colors. There's not a huge reason for it. It's just because I think it looks pretty and it's aesthetically pleasing. So I'm using a teal and like this like reddy orange, and I think it's really pretty. But it doesn't really matter what color you use. You can use a graphite pencil. It doesn't matter at all. But I prefer acrylic markers because they dry super fast. They are pigmented, they don't bleed through, and I can layer ink on top of them and it usually doesn't smear. I just have to let it dry for a little bit. Like with the last anatomy study, I'm gonna do 5 models, all covered, all genders, all positions, doesn't matter. But instead of doing 30 seconds, I'm just gonna click 10 minutes and pause it. So I can just switch over when I'm done with the silhouette. Focusing on the different shapes and how they form together. The head is tilted more so this way, torso is bent this way, leg bent up, knife or sword or whatever, I don't know. Hip is jutting out there, leg. These acrylic pens have a little bit of a smaller brush tip, so I feel like it's taking me a little bit longer. This one's gonna be a little messy, as with every first gesture or, you know, anatomy practice, it's gonna be a little bit effed up. I'm happy with that one, so we're just gonna move on. Next one, let's see, toes up in the air. This one's gonna get cut off and I can feel it in my bones. Typically when I'm doing this sort of study, I look for certain images I like or fit together like a puzzle piece, kind of with a positive and negative shape. But with this one, I just clicked 5, so I'm just gonna do those 5. Leg right here, head, calf, and rope. Rope is part of that silhouette. And that's done. Next one, we have like a yoga-ish pose. She is bending a little bit forward. You can see the curvature in her spine. Arms are pointed forward. The top of her hands are a little bit above her hair. The butt is protruding out this way because it is bending backwards, or at least her left leg is bending backwards. I've been doing so well with my rights and lefts lately. Everybody praise me. I feel so cool about this. I made the body too thin. The chest can go into the back leg for more interest and more action throughout the pose. Leg is bending backwards, that arm, hands, fingers, elbow. Head is a little jank, but whatever, we'll fix it later. Stomach is pushing out a little bit, and done. Oh, I just got the same pose as the gesture one. Okay, well, cool, let's do that. I guess we'll see how they stack up with, you know, the gestures. This is a really important part. If we see, I'm gonna not pause the timer, but whatever. This is a negative shape that we want to pay attention to. It folds in, it looks like a triangle, but you can see the different edges of where the hair lies, the ear, the neck, all that sorts of stuff. So, and I made it too close to the head, but whatever. I'm making it quick, I'm making it fast. Her hips protrude this way and they line up almost with the armpit. Down, down, down. You can see the edge of her ribs right there, her stomach protruding, thighs protruding. I made it too big again. Shh, don't look at that. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm doing something with my life and I should be proud of that. Thighs are going up and then knee is protruding out, and that is the end of that page because I miscalculated. And hip, you can see the rolls right there, and I protruded the what is it called, ribs out too far, and calling it quits. This one, I guess I'll do it on this page. Fuck it, why not? So head, arms, and just because we are working in a shapely manner doesn't mean that we're ignoring the line of action. We can see it pretty clearly through this one that the shoulders are tilted in the opposite direction of the hips, causing a triangular composition. And we're gonna add that cloak in to help with that negative and positive shape. Drape along the floor, ear, and quits. Okay, that took me, I don't know, couple minutes, 5 minutes, I'll say that, I don't know. Now that I'm done with the silhouettes, I'm gonna go back to the original photos and do the line work or the gestural work of it. For the liner, I usually use Faber-Castell pens. My favorite one is Food Nib Hard. It is the best one. I love it so much. On the notes, I was using Food Nib Medium. That one's just a little bit bigger. This one is worn and torn down, so it has a really bulbous point. It's usually really, really tough and it's really thin. It's kind of like a brush pen, but way more stability on it. But this one is just so worn down that I just use it for anatomy practice because I don't care about it. Anyways, I'm gonna start. This one's gonna be rough and I already know it, but whatever. I don't really care about the line work of this. I try to just make it as gestural as possible. I'm looking pretty closely at that, what's it called? The picture, the reference. I try to use a pretty continuous line when I am doing this. As you can see, I did like a shade or like colored in a section of the nose by outlining the shadow. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, I hope it does. Muscles, focusing on those muscles, arm, hand, finger. This hand, wrist is bent up, forearm is bent down, arm like that. I feel like I'm not explaining this well, but just like look. This hip protrusion, this goes together. You can see a line of action right there. Knife made it a little bit too far up, or too far down, that's what I meant. Thigh is protruding with that muscle down there. See that bending of it, calf muscle, leg bending in. See the bone structure of that bending out. So not perfect, but first one, so I don't care. Next one we have, I'm gonna start at the toe because it's at the top. Doing that, leg, this, knee. There's a little protrusion right there, or an indent, I guess. Thumb goes here, fingers overlap there. protrusion of that forearm, upper arm, shoulder goes about here, back muscle there, ear is about here, and then hair. I'm really trying not to look at my paper, but you know, it's an 8. Hand right there. The rope is kind of going that way, and then it bends more so this way. And then the arm, I made the hand way too big, but whatever. I got really excited. There's a negative shape right there. Not actually a negative shape, but a shaded positive shape. So I don't know, interchangeably. You can see the indentation of that back. You can see the thigh, calf muscle once more, protrusion of the lower leg, protrusion of the foot, toes, and then the patella, and then the thigh. And then there's a rope right there. But that one's a little bit better, so kind of proud of that one. This one, we have the hair, scalp, ear, neck, back, curving of that spine. There's the, I would say a really helpful thing with clothing is the stitch marks and how the clothing pieces are put together, where the sleeves go in, where they attach to the main body of the shirt. It really helps you to figure out where the elbow and shoulder are moving throughout the body. Leg right there. This one is tightened up. Leg, it's not a huge muscle, so I'm not gonna over exaggerate it too much. Knee is protruding out. Calf muscle, leg, foot. This one, it's a little bit of a protrusion at the bottom of that thigh. Knee is more sharp and angular compared to the rest of the body. Leg goes under there, not gonna worry about it. Head, pretty bulbous, pretty round. Eye, kind of like a triangular shape with that shadow. And yeah, that's done. Next one, neck. There's folding of the clothing right there. Arms, legs, thighs, bending of the forearm is in the opposite direction of the upper arm. Head, there's a hair clip on top. I think that's what it is, I'm not sure. Scalp, hairline, hair. There's not really a lot of definition in the chin. I pushed this arm way too big. So now I gotta move that over. Not perfect, but I fixed it and I corrected it, and that's all that matters. And smiling, wrinkles right there. And let's see, chest, abdomen, and then crotch, kind of goes in with that, what is it called? Fat fold. Thigh protruding out, hip dips. I love hip dips. I think they add so much more visual interest in the body. Wrinkles on there, wrinkles. This needs to be more taut. And there's a little bit of a bend with that rib cage. This one is too far out, and done. This one, I'm gonna start with the hair right there. An ear, too far out. Face, trying to mostly focus on this picture, but a little bit difficult. Doing that nose shadow once more with a triangular prism. That's not a prism, it's a triangle. Wow. Do I know my shapes and forms? Do I know the difference between 2D and 3D art? Oh my God, crazy. There's a protrusion on that left arm. It twirls into that hand. The hand twirls into this. Thumb twirls out. Twirling. What a wonderful word. Chest is about there. It twists into the abdomen. The abdomen folds because he's sitting down and he's folding back. Crotch, protrusion. There is folds of the clothing there. Protrudes out. Thigh. More so of a indentation up there, and then a fat fold down there. Leg protruding out. Hip dip there. illustration of muscles, bent of the knee, calf muscle, hip, not hip, what? Ankle, Jesus. Can you tell I usually don't talk when I draw? I usually just listen to music and Gacha Life rap battles. This is a really interesting part. I actually really do like that, how the chest folds into that arm. This needs to be pushed out further, made his torso way too short. Fabric, hand is open. Not super interested in knowing how to, well, not super interested in knowing how to draw. I'm drawing what I see because I don't know how to draw that hand. That perspective a little wild. And then this, and if I look at it in a whole, I made the line of action way too stiff in my opinion. So I would push his head farther back and I would put his shoulder down more, his elbow up more, put his other shoulder down a little bit more, his hand up higher, his legs and the torso, I want them to be lower, up, 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 up. Cool. That is how I do my studies. As I pulled out the beautiful orangey reddy color, I just make shapes in the background. I don't know why, I just like it, and I think it adds to the feeling of negative and positive shape throughout the characters and the silhouettes. But that is how I have been studying anatomy recently. There are just a few last things I want to point out, not exactly about observational drawing, but more so making your poses more dynamic. This is something I keep in mind pretty often when I am sketching characters or trying to compose a piece. These are just some like basic little tips. Don't take this as the gospel. Once again, this whole video is my perspective. Create your own. You're beautiful. You have a beautiful mind. Anyways, so because let's go back to this page. Because the hips and the ribs are pretty stagnant because they can't fold, they can't contract, they can't bend, I like to put them in different angles when posing the character. So we have the head and ribs and hips, legs, 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 super long legs because I'm me. Anyways, this is stiff. This is stiff because they are essentially parallel with one another, right? Now, if we were to jut this rib up, so creating this line, and jut this hip up and creating this line, comes to a perspective point that catches the viewer's eye, causing more flow throughout the thigh, throughout the ankles and the feet. Head can even go in the opposite direction of the ribs, so causing another line. Eventually they all intersect at one point or another, but you know, it adds more visual interest to posing your characters. Another huge tip I would say is I always used to draw my characters with feet that just went, you know, straight forward, same level, same plane. You know, there's the feet, there's the toesies, or they would be both on the same level, you know, sideways, pretty stagnant. If you want to design your characters with an interesting pose, if you're using this as a reference sheet, if you're drawing a full body, put your feet in different position, okay? Put them at different lengths. We can even draw a line. So there we go. Put, you know, the right one right there. Balls of the feet right there. You know, we got the heel, we got the arch of it, we got the toes. This can help a shit ton with making the characters more visually interesting. Pretend the characters are on like a snowboard, a skateboard. Think about that. They can be parallel with one another. Say we're trying to draw a character in a pretty stagnant position. They can be parallel with one another, but we can add depth and perspective with it. So I always try to do my feet in different various levels. You know, not everything is perfect. That one's lifting up. Let's say this one is bending back, then knee right there. Then we have like a foot on the floor here, and then foot going down there. This one's going forward, this one's going backwards. Patella, There we go. Those are just some of my tips. I don't know. I really try to make fluid, interesting, dissecting lines throughout the piece. Line of action is super, super important. For example, this one is a little bit more difficult because I didn't do a very well job on the gesture and it is kind of a stagnant pose, but I would say around here and here are some good lines of action. This one, ribs, head, ribs, hip. This one, we've talked about this before, top of the head to the spine and down through that, what is it called? Right leg. I was doing so well with directions, but I messed up. This one, top of the head, down through the hips and onto that leg. This one, top of the head, through that spine, protruding at those hips and down to the stagnant leg. This one, let's see. This one, I messed up a little bit, but it would go like this, and then probably that, or probably this. There's multiple different lines of action throughout every piece, every pose. This one curves with the spine and goes back to that foot. This one is a little bit more difficult. I would say that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. Head, and then that leg, or that. This I already said, but that, and yeah. Lines of action. Very cool. Very interesting. This should be the last thing, but then again, something might pop up in my head, but I don't know. The last thing is posing of characters and where the weight lands in those characters. So let's say this. So there's a log of wood right there, right? Most of the weight is shifted on here. These legs aren't particularly doing anything. All your weight is being stuck on here. So that's why we have the folds of the fat and the muscles on there. The legs are laying a little bit limp, but he's still putting pressure onto those feet. Another example we can see in this one that her left leg is holding most of her weight. She's putting all of her weight on her left leg as this one is being bent up and the toe is just touching the bottom of it. This one, again, the right leg is carrying most of the weight because it's flat to the floor. And then this one is pointing up, carrying little to no weight. This one is holding most of the weight, but this one is causing stability and balancing out that gravity throughout the piece. This one is, I mean, the rope is kind of holding on to it, but I don't know. This, I would say most of the weight is shifted onto her right leg, while this one is balancing out that pose completely. You can't see the legs here, but I'm pretty sure it's this one that is carrying most of the weight. But that is really, really important. And if we look at like Roman and Greek art and a lot of Renaissance art, you will see the contrapposto pose throughout everything because it adds visual interest and it shifts the weight and shows, I would say, more skill, technical skill and knowledge on the body when using contrapposto rather than putting your feet flat on the ground. But yeah, I think that's it. But thank you so much for Arrtx. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if I didn't help or if there's anything that you guys would like a better explanation on, because I don't know, this works in my head, but it might not work for you. And if it doesn't completely work for you, let me know. Go follow all my socials. It should be in my link tree. My Etsy is up again. Go use the discount code on the Arrtx store or Amazon. Amazon is better if you're in the US. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this really helped, but have a wonderful rest of your day. /nice, and I love poo-poo ears. Bye.